Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. And I got to tell you something, people. I want to give a shout out to my newest sponsor. It's called Blowfish for Hangovers. And I'm going to tell you, this stuff is a lifesaver. Just think, after a big night of partying, just wake up, drop 2 Blowfish tablets in water, and drink it up. It's super easy, it tastes great, and it's recognized by the FDA, so you know it works. So here's what you do. You can go to 4hangovers.com. That's F-O-R hangovers.com. That's right, F-O-R hangovers.com. And use the promo code Cooper, my last name. Put in Cooper, and you get 20% off your order. Or just look for them at the pain reliever aisle of CVS. And if you hate being hungover, you got to check out the Blowfish, because the stuff works. And I know firsthand because I used it after a few weeks ago after a Labor Day party. So go check it out. Go to 4hangovers.com and use the promo code. Anyway, we have a great show today. I'm excited. I saw my guest. He had a picture on Facebook with my good friend Rich Redmond. And I said, man, I got to get that guy on my show. So I sent him a message, and he got back to me. And then I had Rich text him, and it all worked out. And my guest is Billy Burnett. How you doing, Billy?
Good. How you doing, Steve?
Good. I'm just chilling. How's Nashville? Are you down there in Nashville, right?
Everything's good. I think that product will do good down here in Nashville because these people like to drink a lot.
I know. I've seen some of the pictures like Rich posts, and it's quite a party city down there.
Yeah, it is, especially downtown. But it's a fun town.
So now you grew up down around that area, right?
I was born in Memphis. I mainly grew up in L.A.
And now, okay.
And I came back to Memphis when I was about 18 to work with Chip Stone. And so I worked with him for a while, and then moved to Atlanta for a while, then moved back to Nashville. So I was here in Nashville in like 72. But this time I moved back here in like 93. And I had a lot of friends down here anyway, and I was kind of dabbling in country music before. I mean, it was, my music's always been kind of on the fence anyway, so it's like,
Now, your career is pretty fascinating. You started recording and singing at a really young age. How did it all happen?
Well, my dad was in it. My dad was Dorsey Burnett. My uncle Johnny Burnett had started. They were the early pioneers in Memphis of rockabilly music. In fact, my cousin Rocky and myself were born a month apart. So they wrote this song called Rockabilly Boogie back when we were born, and that name kind of stuck with, like, the genre of music, kind of made it famous.
So wait a second. So you're the term rockabilly, your father and uncle dubbed, and you're the Billy in rockabilly.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
They wrote a song called Rockabilly Boogie.
Because I always wondered how that term started, because it's such a different thing.
Yeah.
And so of course you had to go into music then, because you're part of the rockabilly.
Yeah. So I cut my first record in 1960 with James Burton and Joe Osborne and Glendy Harden, who were Rick Nelson's band at the time, and later became Elvis's band after Scotty and Bill, I think.
So how old were you when that happened?
I was 7.
Now,
I was 7 when it was with Dot Records. I did a Christmas record. It wasn't like when I started recording, I stayed a recording artist. It was like little, during the summer I'd work some, and do some stuff. But it was always in my blood. I always wanted to do it. Then later I cut a record. A few years after that, when I was about 11, I cut a record for Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. They had this little label called A&M at the time. I say little because it was so small that me and my little brothers licked the stamps on records and sent it out.
No, go ahead.
And the song was a Dr. Seuss song, so it was... and then I started getting a little more serious about it. I would cut do some stuff during the summer. Went on the road with Brenda Lee. Was my first start when I first started touring. I was about 13.
So what's that like?
And I was Pardon?
What's that like? You're 13 and you're on the road. I mean, most kids are in school and you're out traveling around. I mean, you must have seen a lot and learned a lot at that time because, and it's such a young, impressionable age. It's like when we start getting rowdy, like that age. What was that like being 13 and on the road? Did you really see a lot? Did you really think you grew up a lot?
Yeah, of course I learned a lot. It was a big show. She had a big band of the Casuals. So it'd be the Casuals would do do a few songs, and I'd come out and I'd do about 15 minutes. And we'd have an intermission, and Brenda would come on. So it was a lot of fun. I just saw the Beatles movie last night, and that was 1966 when they went over there because they were in the hotel that we were staying at when I was over there with Brenda, and I just saw that movie last night, 8 days a week.
How was it?
Great. Fantastic. I'm a huge Beatle fan, so, it was just fantastic.
So you're touring with her and you're singing, and now I know you eventually self-taught yourself the guitar. When did you decide you wanted to start playing the guitar, and was it easy for you to pick up because you were around music so much, and you had it in your blood because your father was a performer? I mean, what made you decide to say, I want to start playing the guitar?
I just, they were just all over the house. You had a few guitars laying around, and it was like I couldn't, help but start playing. I think I maybe had a couple of lessons. In fact, me and my cousin did have a couple of lessons down at a place called Wallach's Music City in Hollywood, and had like just 2 lessons, just to learn a couple of basic things, and then I was off, played all the time. And then when I got a little older, I would skip school, go to the beach, take my guitar with me, and then I put together a band and started playing. But and then writing. Then I started writing a few little things, and about a week. Well, I had a couple of record deals in between there when I was, in my teens. I just kept cutting records. I was Warner Brothers for a while and cut. I turned down doing a song called Wendy because I thought it was too bubblegum. I wanted to rock more,
Right.
So I ended up, a week out of high school, my dad took me down and introduced me to Chip Smallman, and I went down there to cut for Columbia Records. And doing records ever since then, and had a kind of hard in those days. I mean, my records were kind of all over the place. I didn't know where to land really. I was, in hindsight, I wish I would have kind of stayed with my rock band, but I went with Chips, and it was like they had an incredible band down in Memphis that had got so many hits. They had just got through doing Elvis on that Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto and Son of a Preacher Man by Dusty Springfield. And I loved all those records. The Box Tops, The Letter, the song The Letter. So it was a pretty exciting place at the time. Memphis was like really rocking, so it was a lot of fun.
How are you learning your writing style? I mean, I know you've written for a lot of people, but at a young age, I'm always fascinated when I talk to people who started writing, songs when they get out of high school or college, because at that point, we're young. We don't know, that much, and you got to figure out who's going to convey to. How would you write a song back then? Would you just sit there and write the music first, or the lyrics, or how?
I write some by myself. Yeah, I write both music. Whenever I got an idea, I just kind of wrote whatever was on my mind, and do what anybody does when they write songs. You look for that idea and that melody, and hope it all clicks. And there was a part of the thing down there when Memphis and Nashville was a lot different than LA because you kind of wrote every day. You'd have one of the guys. Chips had a bunch of writers. Had Mark James down there who wrote Suspicious Minds, who wrote Hooked on the Feeling. Johnny Christopher's a great writer. You had Dan Penn and Spooner Oldham, and Chips was a writer himself who wrote. They were recording Aretha Franklin and all this great music was coming out of there. So that was really great. And then I went back to L.A. And kind of got back into the scene there and put together a band, started doing some records. And then before I knew it, I had a rock right after my dad passed away. He passed away in '79. I had a good friend of his that worked in a record company that said, you should put together a rockabilly band and do some of that kind of music. So I did that and was successful at it. We had a top 10 album in L.A. and New York, and went on tour with Steve Forbert, did a national tour. And the record had pockets where it was doing good. It didn't do great, but it was like, I was told at the time rockabilly music wasn't going to happen again. And then all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 months later, the Stray Cats come out with a song. I think my dad had 2 songs on that record.
Okay.
So it was funny. But in the interim of that, I just kept doing records,
What was the music scene like in L.A. in like '79? Because I've always heard it goes in pockets, and there was the clubs. I mean, was there a lot of innovative new stuff happening? I mean, you moved back here and you said rockabilly, you and then Stray Cats, but what was the overall scene when you moved back here? Because I know it was before the glam metal hit, but was LA a good scene for an original act?
It was a great scene. I mean, it was like 1980. So it was like, they thought my music was more punk than anything. In fact, I opened for the Pretenders and was going to do a World Pretender tour, and that kind of fell apart because I think the guitar player passed away. I think he OD'd or something, and then I had a problem. I'd walked through a window and cut my legs, so there was a little downtime I had there. Then I got that fixed and went on, and I went back to Nashville, cut another record under my contract that I had to fill, and did that, and I was nominated for Best New Country Male Vocalist in 1985. I was with MCA Records, I think, and then I was in another band called The Zoo that Mick Fleetwood had put together. Mick Fleetwood and Lindsey Buckingham in like 1983, 84 wanted me to go to New York with them to do Saturday Night Live. So I did that, and so all of a sudden I was in with those guys. It was like Lindsey actually got me in the band, and I ended up staying. Once I joined Fleetwood Mac, I was there almost 9 years.
Right. How did you meet Lindsey and Mick?
I met Mick first at a Dick Clark 25-year anniversary show, and then I met Lindsey one night at the beach. They told me to come down to Malibu to have dinner with them. So I went down, and they said, want to join a band. They wanted to put together another little kind of party fun band. So we put this band. At first it was called the Cholos, and they later changed to the Zoo. But that was Mick and myself and a couple other players. George Hawkins, Kenny Gradney from Little Feat. We had a really good band. Then one day I was in the studio with Roy Orbison, and I get a call from Mick, and he says, hey, we need you to join the band. And I said, hey, when?
Yeah, I mean, were you... go ahead.
I said, when? And he said, tomorrow. Because I guess him and Stevie had just got into it, and they needed they were already in pre-production for the Tango and the Night. So I joined the band. Me and Rick Vito joined the band that very next day.
It's funny. Rick Vito, I know his brother Mark because he used to own a comedy.
Really?
He used to own a comedy club at the Jersey Shore, and I performed there in like 1989. And I remember he had talked about his brother being a musician and Fleetwood Mac thing.
Really?
So it was funny because I knew Mark forever. He had that club, but he had said his brother, they have a very striking resemblance. They look very much, you can tell they're brothers. But yeah, I remember.
Uh-huh.
I remember. I was like, man, because back then, we were just guys in the Philadelphia area, and we're like, and Fleetwood Mac, I mean, legendary band. We were like, oh my god, we were like so pumped that his brother was joining the band.
Yeah. Wow. I never met his brother. I don't think.
He stayed in New Jersey a lot. He was a Jersey guy. So now, but when you met them, when they asked you to join, you had a lot going on. You had a lot on your plate, and I read somewhere where you decided you would much rather go on a big tour than play club dates. And as you said, it said you get back in the trenches. When they tell you you're going to join the band, did you already know a lot of their songs, or did you sit there and go, I gotta learn a bunch of tunes? Or just because you've been a musician for so long, did you just pretty much know how to play the songs?
A couple of them we did in our band, the Zoos, so I did know them. And that was before I joined the band. I did a lot of stuff with Christine and with Stevie, and we all just started hanging out together. It was part of that band. It was just kind of a big family, So once I joined the band, we had plenty of time to rehearse. We'd take each song and do a couple at a time, and before you knew it, we were back to. It was good because Rick and I could play the parts that there was 2 or 3 guitar parts on the record, so it was good that there was 2 of us. We cover a lot of ground, and we stuck to playing the hits like they were on the records. So I think we brought more to the people of the record than even like when Lindsey was with the band, who created the stuff.
Now, when you sit there and you're finally going to start the tour, what's going through your mind? I mean, you're going into everybody who's alive knows who Fleetwood Mac is, and you're going to be going into wherever you're going to go. You're sure it's going to be sold out because they're a huge band. As a guitarist and as being part of that, were you excited? Were you a little nervous because it's going to be such a huge crowd? And you know how people may judge, fans, how fans are. They're like, oh, wait, this is...
Yeah, we didn't know what to expect, to be honest, Steve. We kind of just... we had, we'd joke about us getting jousted around the theater or, the arenas where we were playing, but it was like, it was so big, it was like the circus taking off, it's like a lot of trucks, a lot of buses. We had a private jet, it was like, it was life-changing overnight, life-changing situation because we actually became members of the band. I had to get out of my recording contract with MCA at the time, and Mike Curb was gracious enough to let me out, and it was we were off and running.
Why did you have to get out of your recording contract? Just because it was a conflict of interest, or I mean, you're in a band?
Yeah, they wanted me to join the band, and I think we were doing we were before we left, or right after we got back from our first leg of the tour. We put out a greatest hits album and did. That's when we cut As Long As You Follow, and some other song. I can't remember which one was that now. But yeah, it was like they wanted me to be a full part of the band. I mean, once we got started, the band was really rocking. We did I don't know how many 3 or 4 world tours with them. In '90, when we put out our first full album, Behind the Mask, it was a big tour. I mean, we did 10 dates at Wembley Arena, and then sold out Wembley Stadium, which was like 127,000 people at the time. So it was a really big tour, and I think it surprised a lot of people that we could take a band so big and replace somebody and, go so almost unnoticed, It was like... And I was a big fan of Lindsey Buckingham's. I mean, he got me in the band. I was the biggest Fleetwood Mac fan in the world. So it was kind of crazy that happened.
What's it like playing in front of 120,000 people? I mean, the energy must almost sweep you off the feet. I mean, do you focus? You probably can't focus because you just look out and you probably see just a sea of people. How do you play in front of that, and how do you monitor what you're playing? Because I'm sure there's so much noise, and a band like Fleetwood Mac, people are probably singing the lyrics, and people know this stuff. I mean, if you could explain the feeling of playing with one of the biggest bands ever in front of 120,000, what could you give as a sentence or two to explain the feeling you had?
Oh, it's an incredible feeling. It's very electric, very exciting. The energy is unbelievable, because you do have a little nervous energy every time you go on, no matter, who you are. But it's the same. It's not really, to me, that big of a difference of playing the Ryman or playing the stadium, or a stadium. It's not really not that much difference. I mean, those big places are big, and they're kind of, you can get, the sound's always different in all of them. I mean, I did 6 years with John Fogerty, and we did a lot of theaters, which I really like doing that. But over in Europe, he does big, we did big festivals over there, with, you never know, a couple 100,000 people at a time,
Now, when you were touring the world with Fleetwood Mac, could you tell a difference in the fans in the different places you were? Was there any fans that were more appreciative? Like they always say, if you go and play in Japan, the fans are crazy. It's like worshiping. What were some of the cool places you played that the fans were just more than what you would expect?
I would have to say that Philadelphia is probably one of the ones that they most, probably one of the loudest, and always has been a crowd like that for the big rock and roll bands, I mean, when I joined the band, the wall had just come down. In fact, the first time we went over, the wall was still up. And when the wall came down, Fleetwood Mac played some places where people had never seen a rock band before. So that was pretty exciting to be able to play for some people that had never experienced that before,
Now, when you're on such a big tour, what do you do in your spare time? Do you sightsee, or do you have to worry because, you have a sound check that later today? I mean, it must be, and could you get
on
around?
On our days off, I used to walk a lot, to exercise. So that was my thing, is walking around and looking at the city and checking it out, So I just like to walk for hours, just walking around, checking out the city. That night, the band would get together sometime and go out to dinner, or a couple of us would, whoever was going out to dinner, we'd go out to dinner and do that thing. And it was pretty much still a party band when I was in it.
Yeah. You know what amazes me? I always think about when I talk to musicians who have been on tour and, and these big places. I always think, if cell phones were around then, just think how big your photography collection would be and all the stuff you had, because back then, if you forgot your camera, you're shit out of luck. You know what I mean? You can't take pictures.
Yeah.
But now it's because I know you were recently in Europe. Do you take a lot of pictures and document your tours just to remember them?
I wish I was better at documenting. I've taken a lot of I've taken a lot of pictures. So I'll be putting out a book sometime next year. And it's just a lot of pictures of my dad and uncle and myself and the touring, and there's a lot of pictures you gather on the way to people. And what's great about Facebook is I've had so many people send me pictures that I've never seen before, of us on stage or with somebody, or it's great, it's a great thing to have. I mean, the social network, you get all this stuff that you'd probably never see again if it wasn't up and running,
Right. Now when you, what was I going to say? Oh, when you were working with Fleetwood Mac, were you also still writing songs for other people?
A lot, yes.
Now, how do they find
while
you?
While I was with Fleetwood Mac, I think I I had a hit by Ray Charles at the time, which was a country hit. And he later cut that song, Do I Ever Cross Your Mind, with Bonnie Raitt on the Genius Loves Company album. And I had a hit with Greg Allman, a song called Can't Get Over You, of him as a solo artist. And had a single by Cher, had a bunch of stuff as a writer while I was with them. Because I just wrote a lot. Before I joined them, I was writing a lot for Chrysalis in L.A., and I'd just wrote with all kind of different people. That I was just kind of at that time in my life where I did a lot of writing.
How do they?
And they set me up with a lot of great writers. So, and I always had a record deal during that time, so I was writing for myself, but people would take the songs and cut them off my records a lot of the times, I mean, I had anybody everywhere from Jerry Lee Lewis to Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette, Rod Stewart. A lot of different people cut the songs over the years, so I've been very blessed. Willie Nelson, George Strait. We just had a George Strait real big hit not too long ago, so I've been very blessed when it comes to that.
How do they find you? Like, I mean, do they sit there and go to the record company? Like you said, you're writing for Chrysalis. Did they go and say, we need someone to pen this kind of song? And then Chrysalis looks at their roster of writers and say, okay, Billy can do this? Or does the artist actually say, I like Billy's writing style. I want him to write a song. How do you get in? And it's a very impressive array of stars you're writing for. How do you get that relationship with them, and how do you get that gig?
Well, it was like the only time I wrote for a specific project was we wrote a song for Roy Orbison, and we wrote it thinking of him in mind, hitting those high notes and stuff. And it was a song called "All I Can Do Is Dream You." In fact, I was in the studio with Roy when I got the call from Mick to join Fleetwood Mac, so that was kind of a special day. But the one we wrote for Roy, a lot of times we just write them, and some artists would get it, and just, we had people at the publishing company taking the songs around and plugging the songs, for you. So it was professional songwriters and people that professionally went and had them placed,
So when did you leave Fleetwood Mac? And then, I mean, what all happened?
It happened 1995, almost on the button. It was that year, New Year's Eve of 1995, I think. I'd kind of heard it was coming. In fact, I had left the band. I had a 2-album deal with Warner Brothers. Was part of my deal with them after Fleetwood Mac was went on hiatus. I was going to do a solo record. So at that time, rock music wasn't doing that well. It was really weird. The country scene had blown up into this big, giant business with Garth and everybody. So I had been in that world. So I went back to Nashville. I moved back to Nashville in '93 and started that. And then we put together another version of Fleetwood Mac at the time, Christine. There was one part of Fleetwood Mac where there was only 4 of us. It was Christine, myself, Mick Fleetwood, and John McVie. And then Dave Mason and Becca Bramlett joined the band. We did an album. Christine was still in the band, but she wouldn't tour. So we did that last tour in like 94, 95. And in fact, I kind of put together the inauguration for Gore lived in Nashville here, the Gores. So I was out there with John Kay and some other people playing like their welcome thing, for them. So they came in, and Al Gore said, "Why don't you put together something for the inauguration?" So I got the managers together and put it all together, and then I ended up not doing it because they wanted Lindsay. Stevie asked me if Lindsay would do it to, because he was one of the writers on the song, or did it originally. And I would do that song every night, Don't Stop. In fact, we did it when George Bush Senior was down. We did an AT&T convention and they asked us not to do that song at the time because it was like a song opposing the other party, you know, which the son was part of. So, but we did it anyway. we did it anyway that night. But that's when they put together the dance, and it was all something that I think they'd been just offered this large amount of money to do the video, the dance, and do the tour. So, and that was a big tour for them.
So when you left, I mean, were you guys all cool? I mean, was it good?
It was cool, yeah. In fact, Mick and I just had a band together not too long ago, like 5 or 6 years ago. So I still play with them every now and then, and I just saw them all while they were in town, and everybody, you know, we all get along still. Yeah, it was just, you know, part of the business, you know, of them, you know, putting together that thing. And I had left the band anyway. I mean, you know, it was just something where I wanted to get out on my own and do that thing. But right after Fleetwood Mac, Bramlett and I did a record called Beck and Billy. And it was fun. It was, you know, just kept on going like, you know, we usually do, and making music.
How do you shift gears? I mean, like, because you've done you write and you play different styles of music. How do you shift gears? Like, you know, well, you go from Fleetwood Mac, and then you go with you and Beckham, and then you play different styles. Is it, and this is when you play and also write, is it sometimes you sit there and you're just in a mood to do this certain type of music? I would think, though, because when you play different styles and you write for different styles, it probably depends on your mood. And I know, like, for me, when I listen to music, sometimes I'm in a mood to listen to some bands. And then, like, 6 months later, I can't stand that band. I was sitting there, like, I was talking to my friends. I love Queen, but right now, if I hear Queen on the radio, I turn it, and I don't know why, except for Fat Bottom Girls. When you're writing, and that's me as a listener, when you're writing and you're playing, do you go through that? And do you sometimes sit there and go, shit, I can't go to this because I want to do this? I mean,
it's definitely either where it can burn you out, and there you don't want to hear anything for a while, you know, when you're just in it all the time. And, you know, when you're on, I like being on the road. When you're on the road, you kind of go into autopilot. You know, it's like once you got the show down, you know it and you do it every night. It becomes, you know, just part of your everyday thing, you know. And I've done some touring. I did a tour with Bob Dylan. That was a lot of fun. Learned a lot of songs in a short period of time. I did like almost 6 years with John Fogerty, and he was one of my favorites. So I've been really blessed to be able to work with some of my heroes and some of my mentors, you know.
Now, you also did some acting. How did that come about? And I know you've also done some soundtracks, but I looked at your IMDb. You've been in like 6 movies. Did you want to be an actor? Or did someone like you and say, hey, Billy, we like your music?
You know what, it was funny. The whole time I lived in Hollywood, I think I went on a couple of interviews just from people, I had a lot of songs in movies, you know, at the time. But I moved to Nashville, and they asked me to do this movie about a rockabilly singer, or like the Postman Always Rings Twice. It was a Roger Corman film. And I had never done any acting in them. You know, my first part was the lead role in this kind of drifter movie of this guy that, you know, I did an album, and some of it wasn't released, but I got to do it in the movie, you know, so it was really a cool thing. And I loved the process, so I did about 5 or 6 movies after that.
Now, how is it comparing? You know, you're a guy who's played live in front of thousands and thousands upon thousands, millions of people, and so you're a showman at heart, and you, as you would call it, you have the chops. But what's it like when they sit there and go, okay, there's a camera just on you, do this, and someone's telling you? I mean, how did you adapt to that? And did you think, when you look, I don't know if you've watched them, but did you think you did a good job in your acting, or is there something where you thought you may have been able to improve it more?
let's put it this way. When I saw the movie the first time, I said, I've seen a lot worse. So it wasn't too bad. But learning it, I had kind of a head start because they got me a acting coach, to go through the script about a month before the movie. So they prepped me really good, and I was good at learning my lines from learning, I guess, songs and stuff. So I knew my lines, and you got to hit your mark. There's a lot more to it than just acting. There's all this other stuff that goes into it. But I love the process, and I love learning it. So it was a lot of fun. I hope to. I've written a treatment on a couple of things, and I want to go out to Hollywood and see if I can get a couple of these things started.
Now, would you star in them, or is this something you want to get into screenwriting too?
Yeah, it's something that I've had an idea for a while. It's just an idea about. I would like to be in it, but you never know. But it's a treatment I've got, and me and this producer friend of mine have had the idea for several years. And as soon as I get some time, I'm going to go out there. We're going to write a treatment. And, not the screenplay, but just a treatment. So we can turn it over to some professionals who write screenplays.
Cool. Now, you said you were working with Bob Dylan. How did that come about? And as a singer-songwriter, that must be one of the most complimentary things you can do, because he's such a legend. I mean, did he know of your work, or how did that happen?
Yes, actually, he came by. I was writing for Barbara Orbison at the time. I met Barbara when I was working with Barbara and Roy. And Roy had passed away. So, they had that Wilbury connection. And he came by one night and he said, "Man, I got your record in my truck. So it's really good." So months later, I got a call from his bass player and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, man, that sounds great." Play, go and do a little touring with Bob Dylan. So I did it. I mean, how can you turn that one down?
So what's it like touring with him? I mean, what's it like touring with a master? I mean, and you have to, as you said earlier, consider yourself blessed. I mean, you figure with Fleetwood Mac, Dylan, and Fogerty, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that, especially in American music. Yeah. I mean, what is it like when you sit there and go, "Holy crap, I'm with Bob Dylan"? And you can't explain what Bob Dylan has meant to music, and I'm sure it means so much more to a singer-songwriter like you. I mean, what are your feelings? Yeah. What are your feelings when you sit there and you go that, like, when you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I'm with Bob Dylan"? What goes through your mind?
Well, at that time, it was a lot of work for me to learn a lot of songs, and I learned them all the wrong way because they sent me the records. I should have. They've all changed since years ago. He's changed a lot of them up, so it was a lot of woodshedding, meaning staying in my room learning these songs. And I got a little tinge of carpal tunnel trying to learn all these songs all at once, and then I'd get 5 new ones a night to learn that I got about 20 minutes before we went on. So it was like, the songs a certain way, but then you have to learn them another way, and it was kind of tricky, but I really did love it, and I loved, I got into his, music more than ever then because I had to learn it. And once you get there, to that point of it and really realize what that's about, he's one of my favorites, like a lot of people's.
How long did you tour with him for?
I just toured with him for a couple of months. And then right after that, Barbara kind of got me out of that. Barbara Orbison, she's passed away a couple of years ago now. She kind of got me out of that because I wasn't writing, and I never wrote too much on the road. So I was one of her. I had a co-publishing deal with her. So right afterwards, Jeff Kramer, Bob Dylan's manager, called me and asked me if I would want to join a band. But it'd be good if I got joined up with John Fogerty and put together a band for him. So a friend of mine and I, George Hawkins, and I flew out to L.A. and we practiced our harmonies on the phone, and we kind of had our thing together and got the gig.
And now it must be weird going from Dylan, who is more folky, to Fogerty, because Fogerty has such a distinct sound. Did you have, so you had to learn all those songs? I mean, you've been learning a lot of songs in your lifetime that aren't yours, besides writing them. Do you sit there and go, "Oh my God, I got to learn all these songs," or you're excited because you're a fan of Fogerty's?
I was a fan. In fact, I'd done a lot of his songs in my high school bands and whatever, you know. I mean, who hasn't played Proud Mary or Green River or Bad Moon Rising, you know, all them things, you know, so it was a lot of fun. And of course, both of those guys like to rehearse a lot, so you're kind of ready before you hit the road, you know.
So with your music, I know you recorded a live album in Manhattan.
Yes.
Now, how did that come about? And then you were getting back to rockabilly again? I know it's a very revered CD. I call them albums still, but some people call them CDs. How did that whole thing come about, and how did you choose where to record it?
It was a live record, and I was on the road with Bob at the time, and I used his drummer and my two guys from L.A. We did it in a church in Manhattan. I think a church called St. Peter's or something.
Yes, St. Peter's.
And we did the album in the church, and it was wild. It was live too. There was no overdubs on it, so that would kind of freak me out a little. I like to kind of fix vocals and do this and that, but that album was totally live.
When you say live, was there people in the church watching you, or did you guys just play?
No, it was just us.
Now, how did you come up with that idea?
It was kind of like direct to disc. They only went on this one special kind of tape, so the quality of it was live. You know, there's no overdubs, so everything you do, you couldn't fix anything because it was mics and it was going to one stereo tape. You know.
How did you choose a church to do it? I mean, whose idea was it? Did you sit there? Did you always want to record something to that, or did someone suggest it to you?
They had done a lot of jazz, a lot of orchestrated music. I was the first. They were kind of experimenting with me on how that music would sound there, you know. And we had a lot of fun doing that. I did it for Chesky Records, and they do a lot of direct-to-disc records and stuff like that.
Now, then down the road, you hooked up with a guy named Sean Camp, and you did a bluegrass album. How do you find someone you're going to collaborate? Do people approach you, or how did you sit there and pick this guy, Sean? And I guess you did. It's called Bluegrass Ellis's. What happened there?
Well, Sean and me started out writing about the year 2000, and just somebody had an idea of David Ferguson, who was Cowboy Jack. Cowboy Jack was a producer at Sun Records, and he had done everything from producing Johnny Cash to U2 and everybody, you know. So we were playing with him, and Ferguson said one day, "You guys should do an album called The Bluegrass Elvis." So we did it. And we used the best bluegrass players in Nashville. And there's some great ones here. So we were in the right place, and it was a good record. That was kind of done pretty live too. We didn't overdub on that. That was all you'd hear on that is as it's going down. So
bluegrass is I have friends who play bluegrass, and bluegrass is a really good. It's a great sounding genre. Why don't you think it's become more popular in America? I mean, it's like, because it's good, it's clear, it's very musically inclined. You have to be a good musician. Why do you think it hasn't really? I mean, it's not like people aren't talking about bluegrass, but they're talking about some kind of crap music. Why don't you think bluegrass has taken off? Why in your eyes? Why don't you think bluegrass has gotten the appreciation it should? And it's by the masses. I mean, the people who love it. But why do you think it hasn't got the appreciation?
I think in some pockets of the U.S. it does. I mean, they have these big bluegrass festivals. In fact, my friend Sean, who we were just talking about, he's with the Earls of Leicester right now, and that's with Douglas, Jerry Douglas. So, and Alison Krauss, I think, just brought so much to that world. That album, Raisin Sand, with that her and Robert Plant did, was so great. I'm not saying it's a totally bluegrass record, but it's in that world, you know.
Now, you also had a number one song in Norway?
Yes, we had a song that was in the Eurovision Awards.
Now, what's that
and
like?
It was a song called Butterflies.
But what's it like to have a number one song in Norway? Man, I think that's probably like the most random thing. It's so cool, but when you're a kid, you probably never thought you'd have a number one song in Norway.
Yeah. What happened there was there was this Norwegian artist, never can pronounce her name, Tondi Abarge or
Domli. I have it written down here, Domli, and I'm guessing it's Abarge.
Yeah, that's her, yeah. And yeah, that was a big song there. What happened there was he had the track already written, and he played it for me while I was there. And then he called me. I was at the. He said, "Could you write me some words to this? I'm not happy with some of the words we got for it." So it was kind of half written, and I kind of took it and rewrote it at the Holiday Inn Airport Hotel as I was going back to the States. So I wrote it, and that one night I had some time off. I had some time to spend. I was spending the night, I think, in London, leaving the next morning for Nashville. So I wrote those words, sent them back to him, and he loved them, and they used them.
So you've written a number one song in Norway. You've written for tons of people. Now, when you write a song, are there ones you write specifically for you, or do you write them and just think, if this doesn't fit me, someone else will write it? And are there any songs that you've written that someone else has recorded that you wish you personally had recorded?
Well, I've just found an album. I've just finished an album like that. Like, I've never recorded the Roy Orbison song that I wrote for Roy ever. All I Can Do Is Dream You, and I never recorded the one that Ray Charles did. So I've done those two, and I did another one that was on Willie Nelson's last record called Crazy Like Me. I cut that on this record, and also I did Tear It Up on this record, which was on my live album, but I never do it. It's been years since I've done it on a record, so I figured it was time to do that one again.
So when you write the song for someone else, you're still allowed to do it then. I didn't know, like, I thought maybe if you wrote a song for someone else, they played it and you couldn't play it anymore. But whatever you write is yours then, and you can play it.
Oh yeah. Once they've been released, it's wide open. Anybody can come.
Now when did you?
Yeah,
When did you start recording this new album?
I started this new album. It's been a couple of years now, and I'm kind of just waiting on timing for the book and for all the stuff to all come out at once. It takes time to set up, especially if you're releasing them yourself these days. You need to set up your publicity people and your promotion people and all that. And there's still a couple of labels I'm talking to, so it's a time-consuming thing, and it takes forever to get anything done anymore. I remember when you can do a record one week and have it out the next. It's a completely different ball game now.
Now, how many songs, when you started on this project, how many songs did you think you would use, and then how many songs did you end up using, and how do you as an artist choose what you think the song should, like the Ray Charles one and the one from Live? And those make sense because you wanted to play them. But what's the process of choosing different songs so you sit there and have this CD album just as a tight project?
This one's more like cutting the stuff that other people have done, and that's kind of more of stuff that I've wanted to do that's not, I've just never got around to it, or stuff I've done that didn't make the record before. But, I'm my own boss now, so I can do, what's the beauty of these records is that I can do whatever I want on them, and have that creative freedom to do that,
Now, how would you describe the style of music for this album that's coming out? Is it a bunch of stuff, or can you say distinctly one thing? Because your music, you hit a lot of different genres. How do you market something like that? I mean, how would you say what? Like if it was back in the day when we had record stores, when we had it was so fun to go into a record store. What section would this be in? Would it be in the rock? Would it be in the country? Where would it be? Like if someone was looking back in the day for the album you just recorded, where will we find it in the record store?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's probably going to be, this one's probably going to be, well, it's a lot of rockabilly on it. And rockabilly is considered a music that's in the Hall of Fame, in Nashville. It's going to be a little rockabilly, some just rock and roll, a lot of it. And I've got 2 ballads on this record, so there's that too on this one.
Now, how would you describe in words what rockabilly is?
I just rock and roll, to me it is.
And
you usually have the slap bass. I use a stand-up bass on my music and try to go for some of that original stuff. I've got a few things on the album that are kind of like that and a few things that aren't,
Now, you said you were recently, when I talked to you the first time on the phone, you have been in Europe. Now, how often do you tour, and do you have a big following in Europe?
I tour with a lot of, I tour a lot of, there's a lot of rockabilly festivals over there now. And I'll do one in Spain and one in Italy and one in Sweden. I toured in Sweden with this band called the Cadillac Band. I'll tour with them and then bring over guests like me, and they'll bring over James Burton and Tommy Allsep and some of the older guys that have been around. And they will bring, they have like 5 or 6 artists on their show that were famous in Sweden from pop rock bands, over the years. And I tour with them a lot, and I'm kind of the American guest.
Now, you live in Nashville, and
Yes.
you've been in this business for a long time, and you've seen country, from record. You've written for different country people. Has country changed the music in your eyes? Because I know some people who go country's different.
Oh my God, yeah.
What?
That's probably the most changing genres. I've never seen anything change like this.
How has it changed in your eyes?
What they call country now is like, I don't know. It's really gotten different. I'm not saying it's bad. There's some really good stuff out there, and some great artists out there. It's just it's changed a lot. But now it's kind of going. It'll go. It comes and goes to this pop rock kind of thing, and then it'll go back to being traditional. There'll be somebody come along to where is really traditional, then everybody will do traditional stuff, So it's all constantly changing. It always has.
Now, living in Nashville, do you go out a lot and jam? I mean, or is that something where if you go into a club and because you've been around for a long time and you work with so many great people and you've had such a great career, when you go out, do you know if you, let's say you want to go and jam one night, do you know you can go to a certain place and just they'll say, hey, coming up on stage?
Yeah, there's a lot of my friends that'll be playing a gig, and I know that when I come out to see them, I'll get up and sit in with them all the time. Yeah.
Now, do you show up with a guitar, or do you just use one of theirs? Or you just show up and go?
No, usually, like when I play a gig, I'll have an extra guitar and amp there for any guests who want to get up, sit in, because I like to do that anyway. So my thing's a little different, but there's a lot of bands that usually have an extra guitar amp there or whatever. Or I will take the guitar player that's playing with an artist and use his,
Now, are you still writing a lot these days for other people?
Not a lot, not as much as I used to. I used to have to do it every day, like when I was a writer for Barbara, because I was what you call a staff writer, and she wanted me working all the time, so I did it every day for a while, and I used to do it all the time. In LA, I did it for a little while too. and you get a lot done. The more you write, the better chance you got of getting that one, good one. Hopefully, which we're all looking for all the time. So it's all different.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, for you, what do you do next? I mean, you've done so much. You've been in the business. I mean, you recorded an album when you were 7. I mean, most kids can't even build blocks.
Well, it wasn't an album. That was just a single. It was more of a singles game back then. And what's funny about that is now it's a singles game all over again,
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you do? I mean, you've been in this business for so long. How do you constantly, rejuvenate yourself? And do you ever get tired? I mean, you seem like you're on the road, you're producing. I mean, you're recording. Do you ever just sit there and go, man, it's time for me to retire? Or is that something you'll never do?
Probably something I'll never do. I mean, my health is good. I had an open heart surgery about 5 years ago, so they said I'm good to go for about another 20 or more,
That's good.
But it's like, I was tired after this last European tour because there was a lot of traveling involved, So I'm good about that. But I'm writing a book, too, so I'm kind of thinking about a lot of things, what to put in the book and whatnot, and trying to get all this stuff together to come out all at once,
Is the book going to be a biography about your life?
Yeah, well, it's going to be about my dad and uncle, because a lot of people don't know about them, and what impact they had on just about the whole business, because they were the early pioneers of rockabilly. In fact, Elvis Presley used to hang out where they used to rehearse at, and they rehearsed in a place called the Lauderdale Courts, where Elvis lived, and they'd rehearse in the laundromat there.
Oh, wow.
In the laundry room. So there was a lot of history there. And my dad wrote a lot of the Rick Nelson hits. It's Late, Leave What You Say. Produced Stevie Wonder on his first record that he did, one of his first records.
So that would be a good book.
And yeah, he did a lot of stuff. So, and it'll be about me joining the Fleetwood Mac bunch and some of the stories there, so it should be a pretty wild book.
Well, I want to thank you for coming back on. Coming on because I'm glad we got in
Great,
touch.
Matt. What part of the country do you live in, Steve?
I live in Burbank, California, right now. I love it.
I miss it. I miss the weather so much.
Oh, it's been so wonderful. Except this weekend, it went up to 100 on Sunday, and we finally had a cool week.
Heard.
And you go, 100? It's Sunday. Gee, it's like, it's October. I mean, it's almost October. So, anyway, how can people get in touch to you? I know you have your website, is, I believe...
BillyBurnett.net. You can buy the records there. In fact, I've got 2 that are on there now. And you can also get them at iTunes. So either one of them places.
Are you on Facebook and Twitter?
Yes, I'm on Facebook. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm on Twitter also, yeah.
At Billy Burnett?
But I don't use Twitter as much as Facebook. I hadn't figured that one out as much.
Okay, well, but they're Billy Burnett people. It's BURNETTE. So check it out.
Yes.
So people, check out Billy Burnett. Go to his website. Buy his albums. Listen to his music. The guy's an innovator. He's been around. He's worked with some of the biggest stars. So you got to check him out. Also, follow me on Twitter, people. It's at Cooper Talk. That's at Cooper Talk. You know I'm always tweeting. I'm tweeting jokes. I'm having fun. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. I have over 550 episodes up there, from musicians to actors to directors to writers. It's just, you'll see a lot of people you recognize. And you can email me, cooper@coopertalk.net. And if you want to hear me to get a certain guest, please hit them up. Also, I'm always sitting there. I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Words with Friends. It's Cooper Talk 1. Check out my pictures. Play me in Words with Friends. You might beat me, you might not. And don't forget my other website, stopthesalt.com. Remember when I had that heart problem a few years ago? Well, I wrote a cookbook. It's 120 low-sodium recipes. They're easy to make. There's no pictures to intimidate you, no long lists of ingredients. So go to stopthesalt.com and buy it there. You can buy it at Barnes & Noble or Amazon, but if you buy it at stopthesalt.com, I will sign it, and I will make more money. And that's about it. Also, don't forget my new sponsor, Blowfish for Hangovers. If you're drinking too much, go to Blowfish for Hangovers. use the website for hangovers. Use the word Cooper for 20% off. So check out Billy Burnett. Check out Cooper Talk. Keep listening. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I will talk to you guys next week. Have a good weekend.